A stranger in the parking lot blocked my car and demanded I give him my spot because young people should walk, not take up good spaces. When I refused, he kicked my bumper and screamed, "I'll make sure you never park here again." As the police handcuffed him, I held up my dashcam footage and said, "Say that again for the judge." So this happened about 6 months ago, and I still think about it way more than I should. Every time I go to that grocery store now, I kind of hope I'll run into the guy again. But that's not possible anymore, for reasons I'll get into. Anyway, let me tell you what happened. It was one of those miserable Texas summer days where it's so hot, it feels like the sun is trying to kill you personally. The temperature was something like 105 degrees, and the humidity made it feel worse. People were already on edge. I had just finished work. My job is in IT, so it's mostly sitting around and fixing systems, and getting blamed when stuff goes down even if it's not my fault. That day was brutal. Servers were glitching out, clients were yelling, and our AC at the office had been on the fritz all week. I was sweaty, exhausted, and mentally checked out by the time I clocked out. I didn't even want to go grocery shopping, but I had no food left at home. Just stale cereal and freezer-burned peas. So I dragged myself to the Kroger down the road in North Dallas. It's always packed around 6 p.m., and I knew it was going to be a fight for a decent parking spot. Somehow I got lucky. As I pulled in, someone was just leaving a spot right near the front, like 3 cars away from the automatic doors. Prime real estate. I waited with my blinker on like a civilized human, and when they pulled out, I slid right in. I turned off the engine, grabbed my reusable bags, locked the car, and went inside. My whole trip took maybe 25 to 30 minutes. I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't taking my sweet time either. I got the basics. Bread, eggs, a rotisserie chicken, a few frozen meals, some snacks, drinks. Nothing crazy. Just enough to get me through the week. When I came out, that's when everything went downhill fast. As I walked up to my car, I noticed an older man standing right in front of it. He looked like he was in his late 60s or maybe early 70s. Gray beard, red face like he'd been out in the sun too long, wearing an old dirty cap. His shirt had sweat stains and he looked like he hadn't had a good day either. At first, I thought maybe he was lost or needed help or something. But as I got closer, he looked straight at me and raised his hand, like he was telling me to stop. "You leaving?" he asked. I said, "Yeah, just finished up." He nodded like that was the answer he wanted, then took a step even closer to the car. "Good. I'm taking your spot." I assumed he meant he was in a car nearby and was going to pull in once I backed out. Normal stuff, right? So I said, "All right, cool," and went to open the trunk. Then he said something that made me stop. "Young people shouldn't be parking up front like this anyway. You can walk. These good spots should be for older folks. You should have parked farther out." I looked at him, confused. "I mean, I just parked where a spot opened. It's not a handicapped space. First come, first served, right?" He didn't like that. "Not one bit," he said. "You people think everything belongs to you. Always taking the best and leaving scraps for the rest of us. Now I'm 38. I've got some health issues, bad knees from an old injury, and I've had surgery on my ankle. But that's not really the point. I don't owe him a medical history to justify parking in a legal space. Still, I didn't want to fight with a stranger. I started loading my groceries into the trunk. He just stood there, arms crossed, looking pissed. After I put the bags in, I walked around to the driver's side and got in. That's when I noticed something weird. I checked my mirrors, looked at the rearview cam, and saw him, still standing right behind the car. Not off to the side. Literally blocking me. So I rolled the window down and said, "Hey man, I need to back out." He didn't budge. "My wife's coming around. I'm saving this spot." "What?" "She's circling the lot. I told her I'd hold the spot until she gets here." I actually laughed. Like I thought he was joking. "You can't do that, man. You can't just stand in a parking space like a cone. That's not how this works." He took a step closer. "I was standing here before you came out. I claimed it." At this point, people are starting to notice. A few folks walking by are slowing down. One guy even paused near the cart return and watched. I said, "You don't get to claim a parking spot with your body. That's not a rule. That's not anything." Then he snapped. "You don't respect your elders. You little punks walk around like you own the world. I'll make sure you never park here again." Then, he kicked my bumper. Yup. Full-on boot to the back of my car. It wasn't hard enough to cause major damage, but it was loud. It startled me. And now I was pissed. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just slowly reached up and grabbed my dashcam, the kind that mounts under the rearview mirror. I pulled it off the magnetic clip, turned the screen toward him, and said, "Say that again for the judge." He looked like he just realized he stepped in it. He tried to walk off. I guess his wife had pulled up by now because I saw a car park in a blue handicap spot a few spaces away. That's the part that made my blood boil. The spot she parked in? Closer than mine. And legal. But instead of going to her car, the guy came around to my driver's side window. He yanked on the door handle. Didn't realize the doors were locked. Then he pushed my side mirror in and muttered something I couldn't quite hear. That was enough for me. I called 911 right then and there. He saw me on the phone and backed away a little, but not far. I stayed calm, gave the dispatcher all the info, location, description of the man, what happened, and that I had dashcam footage of everything, including him kicking my car and trying to yank the door open. While I was talking, I kept my eye on him through the mirror. He was pacing now, red-faced, muttering, hands on his hips like he was the one being wrong. His wife had gotten out of their car by then. She was yelling something across the parking lot, but I couldn't hear much. I hung up with 911 and just sat there. Motor running. AC on full blast. I wasn't going anywhere. Then the guy did something that made the whole thing even worse. He walked over to my front bumper, reached down, and pulled off my license plate frame, you know, the plastic part with the dealership's name on it. He threw it on the ground like it was garbage. I opened the door just enough to yell at him. "Hey! What the hell are you doing?" He yelled back. "Trash like you doesn't deserve to park here. Maybe if your car didn't have stupid ads on it, people wouldn't think you're some punk." And then, he spit. Not on me, thankfully. But right on the hood of my car. I slammed the door shut, locked it again, and watched him like a hawk. My hands were shaking now. I wasn't scared. I was furious. A minute later, a store employee came out, some teenager in a blue vest. He walked up and kind of glanced between me and the old guy. Sir? You okay?" he asked, kind of aiming the question at me. I told him. "Yeah, police are on their way. This man just spit on my car, kicked my bumper, and tried to pull my door open." The kid's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Seriously." He backed away like the ground was hot under his feet. I don't blame him. It was not the kind of thing you want to deal with on a grocery shift. The old guy started shouting again. Loud enough now that people really started paying attention. "You're all sheep. Letting these brats take over. I fought in Vietnam, and this is how I get treated? Can't even get a parking space near the store without some tech brat calling the cops like a little coward." He was pacing again, pointing fingers. That's when another man, middle-aged, wearing a cowboy hat and boots, walked over and said, "Buddy, maybe it's time to stop yelling before you say something you regret." Old guy turned to him, fists clenched. "You taking her side too?" The cowboy held up both hands. "Just saying, no parking spots worth this." The tension in the air was thick. People were filming. Some stayed back by the shopping carts. A couple near the entrance had stopped unloading their own groceries to watch. And then, 2 squad cars pulled up. Not one. 2. One parked behind me. The other angled toward the crosswalk near the entrance. Blue and red lights flashing across windshields and shopping carts. The man saw them and tried to act casual. Put his hands behind his back. Smoothed his shirt like that would help. One officer, maybe in his 30s, walked toward me while the other approached the guy. I got out slowly and held up the dashcam unit like it was evidence in a crime show. "Everything's on here," I told him. He took it, nodded, and said, "You okay?" I told him what happened again. Kept it short, kept it clear. Showed him where the guy kicked the bumper, tried the door, spit, and pulled the license frame off. The officer raised his eyebrows when I got to the part about the spit. "On the car?" "Yep. Still fresh." He didn't even question it. Just said, "Wait here," and walked over to his partner. They both talked quietly for a few seconds, then came back. "Can you play the video for us?" the younger one asked. I replayed the part where the old guy said, "I'll make sure you never park here again," and then kicked the bumper. You could hear it clearly. The sound, the rage in his voice, all of it. Then came the spitting and the part where he yanked on the door handle. The whole time, the officer watched without saying a word. When it ended, he handed the camera back to me and said, "Do you want to press charges?" I said yes without even thinking. At that point, the twist happened. The older guy tried to say I assaulted him. Yup. He told the other cop that I charged at him, made him feel threatened, and that he was just defending himself from someone twice his size. Which is hilarious, because I'm 5 feet 9 inches, not exactly intimidating, and hadn't even gotten out of my car until the cops arrived. I heard his claim from where I stood. The officer turned back to me and said, "Did you approach or touch him at any point before we got here?" "Nope. I stayed in the car except for grabbing my dashcam." "Check the video." They did. Right there. Played back the last few minutes to double-check. The other officer asked me, "Mind if we check your bumper and mirror?" "Go ahead." He walked around the car, looked close at the back bumper, then at the mirror the guy tried to yank closed. "Yeah," he said. "There's a scuff here. Mirror's loose too." They called it in. Took photos. Logged the report. Then one of the officers told the guy he was being detained for questioning and possibly arrested for harassment, property damage, and making a false statement. The old man lost it. "You can't do this. I was protecting my wife. She needs that spot. My back is shot, my knees are blown. I fought for this damn country." He kept shouting as they put him in the back of the car. He slammed his shoulder into the door frame trying to resist, and then started fake coughing like he was about to pass out. His wife ran over yelling, "He's got medical issues. He didn't mean any harm." The officer turned to her and said, "Ma'am, you're in a designated handicap spot, legally parked. Your husband could have joined you instead of starting a scene and damaging someone's car." She went quiet. People clapped. Not kidding. A group by the entrance actually clapped. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because as they were pulling away, I noticed something weird on my windshield. A sticky note. I peeled it off. It said in crooked handwriting, "I know where you live. Watch your back." I stood there, note in hand, pulse pounding, as the squad car turned the corner and disappeared behind the rows of parked cars. Let me know if you want to hear what happened after that. Because that note? It started a whole new problem. And no, I didn't take it lightly. Not one bit. I stood there staring at the note, heart thudding in my chest. It didn't feel like something written in the heat of the moment. It was too calm, too deliberate. Sloppy handwriting, but the message was clear. "I know where you live. Watch your back." Now, here's the thing, I hadn't told anyone my name. Not the guy, not his wife. The officers had my info, sure, but I was careful about that. So how the hell did he think he knew where I lived? I got in the car, locked the doors, and sat still for a few minutes. Brain racing. That kind of threat, real or not, messes with you. I kept thinking, did he follow me before? Did he somehow get my plate number earlier and run it through someone? Then it clicked. The dealership frame. The one he yanked off and threw on the ground like it was trash. It had the name of the used car lot I bought the car from just outside of Garland. Small place. Family owned? Not a huge chain. If this guy lived nearby and knew people, or even used to work there, he might have thought he could call up a favor, maybe ask someone shady to look into the plate or sales record. It wasn't impossible. It felt like a stretch, but at the same time, so did everything else about this day. I drove straight home. Didn't stop for gas. Didn't even turn on music. Just kept checking the rearview mirror like some bad crime drama character. I took 3 extra turns before I pulled into my apartment complex. Paranoid? Maybe. But better than being followed. Once I was home, I scanned the parking lot, made sure no cars I didn't recognize were around, and then backed into my usual spot. First time I'd done that in years. Just wanted the plate facing the wall. I took the note inside and snapped a photo. Sent it to a friend of mine who works for a private security company. I asked if he'd ever seen handwriting like that in threat reports or anything. He said no, but added, "That's not a bluff kind of note. That's someone trying to rattle you." It worked. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet, honestly. No calls. No weird cars outside. I kept my head down, parked in different spots, started walking to the convenience store instead of driving there. The paranoia had teeth now. Then, on a Thursday night around 2 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a motion alert from my Ring camera, the one I installed a year earlier after someone keyed my car in that same lot, different story. I opened the app and saw the notification. Motion detected at front door, 2:03 a.m. I played the video. And my stomach dropped. The feed was dark but clear enough. A man, tall, thin, wearing a hoodie pulled up tight and a face mask, stood on the sidewalk in front of my door. He didn't knock. Didn't move. Just stood there for almost 2 full minutes. Looking straight at the doorbell camera. And then he turned and walked off. Didn't go to another door. Didn't take anything. Just disappeared into the dark. I saved the footage and called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out, reviewed it, and took a report. He said the same thing everyone always says in situations like this. Could be coincidence. Could be a prank. Yeah, sure. At 2 a.m. to my door, 4 days after a parking lot meltdown and a handwritten threat note? Didn't feel like a prank. I gave them the note too. The officer took a photo of it, bagged the original for fingerprinting, though he warned they might not get anything, and said they'd follow up. Spoiler. They didn't. But the next twist? That one came from a place I didn't expect. My neighbor. He's a guy in his late 40s, lives 2 doors down. Keeps to himself mostly, but we say hi in passing. That Friday, he knocked on my door and asked if everything was okay. I said yeah, more or less, and asked why. He goes, "You had someone poking around your car the other night. I thought it was a repo guy at first, but the way he was moving didn't look right." I asked what time? He said around 1:30 a.m. The same night the guy stood at my door. He'd been smoking on the balcony and saw someone walk up to my car with a flashlight. Opened the passenger side door, unlocked, my mistake, and started going through the glove compartment. Then left without taking anything. Nothing seemed stolen, but I checked anyway. Insurance papers were there, registration, dashcam backup card. My spare keys were not in there, thank God. I never leave them in the car. But the glove box was definitely rifled through. Now I was done playing nice. I went straight to the dealership that had sold me the car. Brought the license plate frame with me, slammed it on the counter, and asked if anyone by the name of Donald or Don had ever worked there. Long shot, right? The guy at the counter blinked, then said, "Don P?" and gave me a full name I won't post here. He used to do detailing and drive cars to auction. Got fired a couple years ago. I showed him a photo I'd pulled from my dashcam of the guy in the lot. He squinted and nodded. Yeah, that's Don. I asked if he had access to buyer info when he worked there. He hesitated. He shouldn't have. But he was the kind of guy who'd go digging anyway. So now I knew his full name, that he'd probably used his old job to find my info, and that he was not just some grumpy grandpa having a bad day. This guy was playing a long game. And I was done being the mouse. Let me know if you want the next part, because that's when things got even messier. Police reports, a visit to his house, and a security trap he never saw coming. It took me a week to track him down, and I'm not proud of how obsessed I got. But once I had a name, a face, and a possible motive, I couldn't let it go. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted this to be a weird, isolated incident with a cranky man who had a bad day. It wasn't. Don lived in a small, beige house about 20 minutes away from me, near Mesquite. I found it through public records once I had his full name, tied to an old detailing complaint listed on a local business forum. That alone made me uneasy. People described him as aggressive, threatening, and in one case, the reason I installed cameras. That last part stuck with me. I didn't go there to confront him. Not at first. I just wanted to see if his car was outside. Maybe get some closure. But when I drove by that afternoon, something I didn't expect happened. He was sitting in a lawn chair, staring directly at the street. Like he knew I'd come. And as I passed, slow enough to see but not so slow to stop traffic, he stood up and smiled. Like it was all a game. I went home, sat on my couch, and couldn't shake it. That smile wasn't senile confusion. That was calculated. That was a man who wanted me to know I wasn't untouchable. I called the officer handling the report and told him everything, the dealership link, the ring footage, the neighbor's testimony, and now, this. He said. If he hasn't committed a crime recently, there's not much we can do yet. Yet. That word lit a fire under me. So I set a trap. I borrowed a second dashcam from my friend, the private security guy, and mounted it on the inside of my car, angled toward the passenger side. I also got a small GPS tracker and stuck it under the trunk lid, just in case someone tried to move the car. Then I waited. 3 days later, I got an alert. My car alarm went off at 3:41 a.m. I checked the camera. There he was. Don. He wasn't wearing a mask this time. He opened the passenger door again. Stupid me, I'd forgotten to relock it after groceries. And this time, he planted something inside. A small black pouch, tucked under the seat. I waited until the next morning. Didn't touch it. Didn't move the car. I called the police, told them I had footage and that someone had planted an unknown object in my car. They took it seriously, finally. 2 cruisers and a plainclothes officer showed up. They pulled the bag out with gloves and opened it right there in the parking lot. It had a copy of my old apartment lease, the one I moved from last year, a folded-up printout of a Google Maps route from my place to Kroger, and a single, used bullet casing. That was it. No note this time. Just a silent message that said, I know where you were, I know where you are, and I could do something worse. That's when it all came crashing down. The officer made the call right there to bring him in. They had enough now: trespassing, tampering with private property, intimidation, and unlawful surveillance. The fact that he used info possibly stolen from a dealership's database only added fuel. They picked him up within 48 hours. I didn't even know until I got a call from the detective saying he confessed to everything. But that's not where it ended. Apparently, the man's obsession ran deeper than I thought. During questioning, he admitted that he felt targeted by the world, and that seeing someone younger, healthy-looking, and taking a good parking spot like it was nothing triggered something in him. Said he'd been following people like me for years, not to hurt them, but to remind them they weren't special. But this time, he went too far. He didn't expect me to fight back. Didn't expect cameras, or neighbors, or receipts. At the hearing, I sat in the courtroom while his lawyer tried to spin it as an elderly man with undiagnosed PTSD and mental decline. Said he'd never hurt anyone, never laid a hand on me, and that his actions were just bluster. That's when the judge asked to see the footage. All of it. Dashcam, ring cam, parking lot video from Kroger, everything. I watched from the bench as Don's face slowly changed with each clip. First the bumper kick. Then the door handle. Then the pacing. Then the bag under the seat. The judge didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. And then Don spoke. Loudly. Unexpectedly. He stood and shouted. She's the one who thinks she's above everyone. You think cameras make you better? You think the world owes you safety? You've never had to fight for a damn thing in your life. His wife, sitting behind him, burst into tears. And not the soft kind. Loud, shaking sobs like something cracked inside her. She whispered, You told me it was just about a stupid car. Everyone in the room froze. The judge banged the gavel and had her escorted out gently. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. But I felt it in my chest, the rage, the shock, the shame, and something else, relief. Because finally everyone saw it. It wasn't just a parking lot dispute. It wasn't just a cranky man with bad knees. It was someone who had been slowly poisoning the world around him and finally got caught with his hands in the dirt. Don was sentenced to probation, ordered to undergo a full psychological evaluation, and banned from contacting me or coming within 1,000 feet of my home, car, or workplace. A restraining order with teeth. In the immediate days after, people had opinions. My neighbor told me, You did the right thing. You stood your ground. Others? Not so much. A friend of Don's posted online that I ruined a veteran's life over a spot. A few anonymous emails trickled in calling me entitled and overdramatic. But you know what? I sleep now. I park where I want. I walk into Kroger and nod at the security camera like it's an old friend. That spot, the one 3 cars from the entrance, I still use it. But now, I make a point to park there every Friday. Because it wasn't about a space. It was about power. About fear. And about someone thinking I'd just roll over. I didn't. And I won't. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that silence doesn't protect you. Cameras do. Speaking up does. And documenting everything does. So yeah, I have regrets. I regret not locking my car. I regret not taking that first note seriously enough. But I don't regret standing up. I don't regret pressing charges. And I don't regret holding my ground when someone tried to make me small. Because now, he's the one who has to walk farther. Not me.